Boy, they got these cats mad.
We have seen one estimate
got
that
these
says
cats
it would
mad,
cost
yo. I'm saying they
$88
got these
billion
cats mad.
to deport 1 million people a year.
I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is it worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there's. Families can be deported together.
I'll tell you this, they don't have to help us, but they need to get the hell out of the way because we're coming and we're going to do it. Which means if I got to send twice as many resources to that sanctuary city, twice as many agents, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I've been saying for the last several days that they need to study the law. They cannot help, but don't impede us and don't cross certain lines. There's a statute under Title 8 United States Code 1324 that talks about harboring and concealing an illegal alien. Knowingly harboring and concealing an illegal alien from ICE. They need to read that statute and become familiar with it, because if they cross that line, there will be consequences. So, look, we're prepared to take action, but I hope they come to the table and realize we are prioritizing the worst of the worst first. Help us do that. Help yourself make your community safer. That's what you're supposed to be doing. In the country illegally, you're not off the table. I mean, we've been looking for fugitives. There's over 1 million illegal aliens in this country who got due process at great taxpayer expense, were ordered removed by a judge and failed to leave. So they're also a priority. But yeah, I mean, we'll be moving on to those who may not be a criminal, may not be a fugitive, but they enter this country illegally, which is a crime, and they're here illegally, and they are not off the table.
Okay, so get this. Imagine millions of people suddenly vanish from the U.S. workforce.
Poof.
Just like that.
Gone.
What would happen? I mean, we're going to dive deep today into what could happen if we deported like 11 million undocumented immigrants. Wow. And here's the twist.
Okay.
We're going to look at what would happen if we also denaturalized all their kids.
They're U.S.-born children.
Yeah, exactly. Born here.
Right.
But their parents weren't. So are they really citizens? It gets complicated.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So we've got a ton of reports and research and data all about the economic side.
Yeah.
You know, what happens to jobs, what happens to like the whole economy. But then there's this other side.
Right.
The legal stuff, the families, the whole social fabric.
The human impact.
Exactly, the human impact.
It's huge.
So yeah, today we're really going to try to untangle all of that.
That's a big one.
It is. It is.
You know, it's interesting because we're not just talking about immigration policy here.
No.
It's so much bigger. We could be talking about totally reshaping the U.S. economy, our legal system, even families and communities.
Absolutely. And to even like wrap our heads around it, I think we got to start with where we are now, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what does it actually look like? How are immigrants and their families already a part of the U.S. economy? I mean, you've looked at all this research. What stands out to you?
You know, the thing that really jumps out is how much some industries depend on undocumented workers.
Okay, like which ones?
Like agriculture,
Yeah.
construction, hospitality. These are all places that are already having trouble finding people to work. And these workers are filling those gaps,
Right. And then there's their kids, right?
Right.
The ones born here. I'm seeing all these reports about how they grow up, they become taxpayers. They're like a bridge between immigrant communities and the rest of society.
Yeah, exactly. They're completely integrated. They're driving local economies. They're starting businesses, the whole thing.
They're Americans.
They're a huge part of the workforce, that's for sure.
So we've got this picture of like what it is now.
Right.
But let's do that thing you were talking about.
Okay.
Let's flip it.
What if they're gone?
Yeah. 11 million people just gone.
It's a lot of people.
What happens?
Well, first off, you're going to see massive labor shortages, that's for sure.
Okay, that makes sense, but like how bad?
We're not just talking empty fields and houses that aren't getting built.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine restaurants having to close because they don't have enough people to cook or serve.
Oh, wow.
And that's just the beginning. It snowballs from there.
So fewer people working means fewer people buying things.
Exactly.
Less money flowing around.
Local economy shrinking.
But couldn't some people argue that like less demand means prices would go down?
It's not that simple.
Okay.
There's a real possibility of a serious economic downturn.
Like a recession?
Possibly.
Wow.
There's one report that highlights the tech sector in particular.
Oh, right. Silicon Valley.
Exactly. They rely on a lot of highly skilled immigrants, If those workers are gone, the U.S. might lose its competitive edge in tech.
We'd fall behind.
And that could impact innovation and our share of the global market. We could be talking trillions of dollars shaved off the GDP over 10 years.
Trillions.
Yeah, and that's not even counting the effects on other things like the housing market.
So if no one's buying houses,
Exactly.
prices would plummet.
All connected.
Okay, wow, that's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But then there's that whole other layer, the denaturalizing U.S.-born children thing.
Right.
It's pretty intense, all this legal analysis on the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship.
Yeah, it's a cornerstone of our legal system.
So to take that away,
It would be unprecedented.
would it even be legal?
That's the question, isn't it? It would be a massive change to the legal system, probably end up going all the way to the Supreme Court.
And what about the human side of it all? Families being torn apart, children being separated from their parents.
It's a minefield, ethically and morally.
It doesn't seem right.
And then there's the long-term damage to the economy to think about.
Because those kids would grow up to be workers, too.
Exactly. We'd be losing a whole generation of educated, skilled people who would have contributed to the workforce, you know?
Doctors, engineers, business owners.
It's a loss for everyone, not just the families directly affected.
So let's talk about the actual cost of all this.
Okay.
The money, the dollars and cents. These reports have some pretty crazy numbers.
Yeah, mass deportation and denaturalization would be incredibly expensive, like astronomically expensive.
How expensive are we talking?
Think legal battles, detention centers, the logistics of moving millions of people, all the enforcement agencies involved. It would add up to billions, maybe even trillions of dollars.
And then on top of that, we'd lose all the tax revenue from those deported people and their families, right?
Exactly. Less economic activity means less tax money coming in, which would put even more strain on government budgets.
And then there's the strain on things like social services.
Right. Families that have been torn apart might need more help, putting even more pressure on resources that are already stretched thin.
Now, we do have to acknowledge that there are arguments in favor of stricter immigration enforcement.
Of course.
Some people believe that mass deportation is the only way to protect national security and American jobs.
Right. And those are valid concerns that need to be part of the conversation.
So maybe this all comes back to that question of what does comprehensive immigration reform really mean?
Yeah, that's the big question.
How do we balance the economic realities with the legal stuff and the human side of it?
It's not easy.
It's a huge issue with so many different sides to it.
Definitely.
But what we've learned today is that this deportation and denaturalization thing, it's not just about numbers.
Right.
It has huge consequences that could completely change the country as we know it.
Absolutely. And we have to remember that the U.S. economy and immigrant communities are totally intertwined.
It's like a tapestry. You pull one thread.
And the whole thing unravels.
And figuring out how to make it all work is on all of us.
It's a challenge.
It is, but it's a conversation we can't afford to ignore.
Couldn't agree more.
So as you go about your day, think about what a future with a fairer, more effective immigration system could look like. What solutions make sense to you? It's a tough topic, but it's something we all need to be thinking about.
It's the only way forward.
Exactly. It's the only way forward.